Uh, Kia ora, everyone. Tonight we have a guest. This episode number 6. We have Eliezer from East Auckland. He's a rapper. I got to review his album recently. I think it was called Volume One. Diaries. What was the name
Diary
of it?
Entries,
That's right.
Volume
Yeah,
1. Yeah.
I really liked it. And to be honest,
Thanks.
as I was no problems. As I was listening to it, I think I wrote in my review that there were just different, like it was capturing different parts of hip hop and what hip hop is.
Mm,
So it'll be really good to talk to you and for you to talk to my students. Our year 10s are currently learning about hip hop, so we have a really great opportunity to discuss hip hop, what it means, the culture, how it can be, or how it has been commercialized in some ways, but
mm.
also what is hip hop originally and how did it grow. So I want to give the
Awesome.
floor to you for a moment just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about where you came from and how you got into music, etc.
Cool. Hey guys, my name's Eliezer. I'm originally from London. I moved here when I was 13, just about 11 years ago now. Um, First got into hip hop really when Eminem dropped Recovery. I think the song Not Afraid was like one of the first ones I heard, but I'd been listening to like Mac Miller a little bit and had dabbled in a few songs before that, but I think when Recovery came on, I was hooked. Started writing my own raps properly when I was 17, around 2015, and I was just addicted to it. Just started writing raps almost every day, and here I am now making music every day.
Yo, and you got like a following, like a decent following on Spotify, etc. Right? Like it's
Yeah,
cool to
man,
see.
we're growing. Yeah.
Yo, so but actually, that's interesting you say Recovery. So I heard Eminem when I was probably, man, was this year 2000, 2001? The
Yeah,
Marshall Mathers
nice.
LP.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that blew my mind because before that there was Slim Shady, and
Mm,
uh, and when you read about Slim Shady as the character, we talked about this just before we hit record.
yeah.
When he released Marshall Mathers, it was almost like two different LPs. One was the character Slim Shady, the other was a human being. So
Yeah.
what kind of brought you to Recovery? What kind of got you into that one?
I think it was just how real a lot of it was, and it was the lyricism specifically. I'm a very lyric focused person, and just the things that he was saying, even though I was a kid, I still felt like I connected to it.
Mm.
And obviously, the musicality of it's amazing, so that drew me in too. But yeah, I also just liked how he could rap real fast, but he could also rap slowly, and it still had like real cool flows and content to it. Um, but yeah, it's hard to pinpoint it to one thing. He's just incredible all around. So I think just he made great music and it resonated with me.
There's one thing that Eminem has going for him, which I've always found, is that he's able to stay on topic within his song.
Yeah.
Like I'm a big hip hop guy. I love all sorts of music. Just for the just to make that clear. Like I love metal and hard rock and soft rock and folk and jazz, etc. But hip hop's got a special place for me because of just the content and how it grew. And one of the
Mm.
things I've noticed is that a lot of artists kind of deviate from a particular topic, but Eminem never did that. Like that was one of the things I really appreciated about him. Um,
Yeah, and that's a great characteristic of a good storyteller. I think for me, the songs that will always be my favorites are the ones that paint a real vivid picture, tell a really good story. And if you're deviating, talking about all these different things, it's hard to really immerse yourself in whatever they're speaking about.
what do you think is one of your favorite tracks from Eminem that really stands out to you? You did mention "Not Afraid"
Oh,
before.
that's a really good question. I think
Thank
lose
you.
yourself. Lose yourself
Yo,
probably like it's a little cliche, but damn the like internal rhyme schemes he does while staying on topic and painting such a vivid picture of what his life was like and the surrounding of him on the come up. Just and I think no matter what you do, you kind of can put yourself in his shoes in that
mm,
song. Whether you're
mm.
a rapper or whatever you're doing in life.
That ending to 8 Mile is still one of my favorite movie scenes of all time because
Yeah.
he was always the underdog, and then he got a chance to really just let loose. And I know that it's semi-fictional, but it's based on real life stories about how he got his comeuppance. But
Yeah,
that
man.
to me is a perfect example of somebody who knew what he was capable of and was able to deliver in front of an audience that didn't believe in him. And I guess
Yeah.
that's one of the big things that we as artists find right now is that there's so much exposure to artists from all over the place. It can be easy to feel like not that good when there's so much great talent out there. But I
Yeah.
think everyone's really, really good. And so, like, as I said to you at the beginning, listening to your rap, I was like, man, me and my mate in my car, who I drive home from work every day, we're like, he's like, I'm adding this to my playlist.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
So what
And
inspires you to keep writing and producing music? What's the big inspiration there?
just my life, to be honest. I think when I first started writing raps, it was more just because it was like my version of a diary. That's why my project's called Diary Entries, because I really got into it at a low point in my life, and that was my way of coping with everything and venting about the things that was going on. And then it was just such a healthy and enjoyable way to do that, that I just kind of did that for everything. When I was feeling good, I wanted to write a rap about it. When I was feeling bad, I wanted to write a rap about it. And it just ended up being my way of expressing myself. So I think I'll probably always do it, even when I'm like 60 years old and no one wants to listen to me rap anymore. I'll probably still be doing it, you know?
Do you write? And I notice on your album, you have someone who writes your beats for you, right? Which is
Yeah.
quite commonplace, and you've got a good relationship with that person.
Yeah, that's like my best friend. His name's Jake Lepp, but he goes by Ten.Oh as his producer tag. And I
Yeah,
met him playing video games when I was 14, and we kind of just did everything together.
we'll
Um,
touch on this in a moment because I googled this and I found a video about you in RuneScape. So we
oh,
have
no
to talk
way.
about this.
Cool, man. Yeah, no doubt.
So let me ask you a question. Here's one thing. So as a songwriter myself, I find that as I'm creating my music, like as in the guitar riff or whatever, that influences my direction about where my lyrics go. I kind of just freestyle a little bit, and then maybe
Yeah.
a couple of words will pop up, and then I kind of follow that. I call it the rabbit down the rabbit hole. What
Yeah.
happens with you in getting beats from Ten.Oh?
So that's the thing. I need to resonate with the beat. Like the way that I'm feeling has to align with the beat that he sends me. So it doesn't always land when he sends me a beat, but sometimes he'll send me something that perfectly captures the emotion I'm feeling, and that's when we make magic. That's where the magic happens. Yeah, it's just finding those right moments where he's created something that draws out how I'm feeling, and then we just run down that rabbit hole.
So here's a really hard question to answer, but I try to ask this as much as I can. What are a couple of songs that you've written that you feel like that demonstrates just what you've spoken about there, where there's a beat that's come through, but it's just ended up feeling like the most complete and the most honest, and like that first track on the diary entries to
Yeah, that's
me
a good
is like one of
example.
my favorite.
Yeah, man, that's a great example. I reckon Alchemy just felt right. The time of the year that I dropped it felt right. It just spoke to me. As soon as I heard it, I knew exactly what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. Um, and then there was another one called Diamond Eyes on the album that goes for a more like lo-fi hip hop approach. Um, that one, when I first made it, like it wasn't like it was probably one of my least favorites. And then once I'd fully produced it, mixed it, mastered it, I was like, wow, this really resonates with me. So I guess I had to see that one through to really get the full emotion out of me. Um, and that one kind of surprised me because I didn't know I was even feeling that way, but the beat sort of found it in me and almost showed it to myself, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I like to say like it's like songwriting is kind of like pulling something that exists in the universe that no one's seen and you're bringing it down to earth, and that's like the first time you also see it, but you get to share that now with everybody else. Do you know what I'm saying? You get that
I
feeling?
absolutely do, bro. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like the best songs are the ones when that feels effortless. When you're trying to pull something out, it's way harder than the ones where it's like, oh, that just took 20 minutes and I wrote a whole song. Where the hell did that come from?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So here's a couple of other good questions that I want to ask you about is where do you think hip hop is right now? Like if like when I start teaching hip hop to my students, we always talk about the birth in the Bronx and getting, getting the kids or just the people out of the situations they were in and using it as a really positive
Mm.
influence. And so like songs like The Message, obviously there's some pretty gnarly stuff that they're talking about, but that was real to them at the time, and people understood what was going on where they lived in the New York region, right?
For sure.
So where do you think hip hop is right now? And it's the number one genre. It has been for years.
Yeah, it's interesting, bro, because hip hop's now pop music. So
Yeah,
it's
true.
really evolved, and I see more and more of genres blending together. And hip hop is like the fundamental of a lot of these genres that's being blended together. Um, I think it's in a good place. I find it cool how it's like expanding. I think to be successful in hip hop, you always have to have the fundamentals. You've got to be able to rap. And I
Yeah.
think that's what a lot of the new age are kind of ignoring. The fact that like even if you are doing the new styles, you still got to be able to rap to even be good at the new styles, because that's where the core of your style comes from. But I'm excited to see, where it goes next, because it's constantly surprising me.
Well, there was that phase that I kind of watched over the last, I don't know how many years, but like when SoundCloud became a real big thing in it. I mean, it's always been big, but it really blew up for a lot of people like Lil Nas X, Little Peep,
Mm.
Little Pump, and all these. But there was a particular style of rap that they were doing that it kind of felt like they took what social media could do and their image, and it kind of, in my mind, kind of overtook hip hop. But that's not a bad thing because it introduced a whole new audience to a different style of
Yeah,
music by getting them interested in it. Do you know what I mean? How do you feel about that? Let's give it a term. It's commonly used, like the mumble rap thing. Is
yeah.
it good, bad? Like, how do you feel about it? I don't really see too much negativity in it.
I don't see too much negativity. There's obviously the element of it kind of lacking a message, and depending on what they're talking about, it can have a bad influence. But at the same time, there's a lot of that stuff that's really musical. So even
Mm,
if you can't really hear what they're saying, it's the tone of their voice and the way that they're saying the things they're saying. And I think Young Thug's a really cool example of like someone who does really weird and wacky stuff with his voice, but it just
mm,
sounds really cool.
mm.
Um, Even if he's not saying the most profound stuff while he's doing it, it's just musically quite nice.
That's right. So like Little Wayne was one that took me a long time to kind of really get into because
Mm,
I can't remember if it was volume 4, 6 foot, 7 foot, I think is the name of the song. Just
yeah,
the lyrical genius of his, like, kind of setting up a line and then punching it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
that to me is clever, even if he's off topic the whole time. It don't matter. It's just clever lyrics.
yeah,
Um, you also mentioned at the beginning Mac Miller as being one of your big influences, and I feel like
for
he's one of
sure.
those ones that's just like when you see him, you've seen that was it the Tiny concert, Tiny Desk
Oh
concert?
yeah, Tiny Desk, yeah.
It's like one of the hands down one of the best hip hop shows I've ever seen because you can feel his soul coming through. Who do you reckon? Other
For
obviously
real.
Mac Miller, R.I.P. bro, but anyone else that you feel at the moment kind of exemplifies that sort of stuff as well?
Ooh, that's a great question, bro. Um, I think someone really relevant at the moment that I think has a lot of longevity is Jack Harlow. He's coming
Okay.
up, but I think he can rap. He's got a unique sound that kind of sounds familiar. Like he's doing something completely new that kind of sounds familiar. I'm not the biggest Jack Harlow fan, but I think he's doing really well at the moment. People that resonate with me quite a lot is like I really like J. Cole. He's not new or
Yo, I was gonna
anything, but
say, yeah.
J. Cole is like one of those people that just oozes soul and has incredible music. Um, I really like what Russ is doing in the industry at the moment, paving a way for independence and showing how you can break into the scene and pretty much be your own label. So I thought that's pretty cool. Um, and Drake is just hands down, just ticks all of the boxes. It's pretty
Yeah,
hard
he's
to.
an interesting character because I think I remember seeing him on a video with there's a few other artists. This is a long time ago, but he just continually changes and evolves and does really well. So yeah, I think
Yeah,
there's a good mention for Drake. Um, I did have a couple of other questions I'm trying to think of that kind of just popped out of my brain for some reason that's disappeared. We've gone off into the ether. Okay, so we'll come back to that before we go though. tell me a little bit about what you're doing at the moment and where you're going to next. And also, and this is actually my question I had. You mentioned before that you mixed, mastered, and things like that. Do you do all your own mixing and mastering yourself?
Yeah, so for the past 4 years, I've done all of the mixing and all of the mastering. But this year, I started bringing on a mastering engineer because I felt like my mixing had got to a really good level, but I couldn't quite hack the mastering side of things. So I'm outsourcing that now with Chris Chetland at Cog
Oh,
Studios,
yeah,
and he's phenomenal. So
he's the man.
yeah, but it's a whole different skill set in itself. Mixing versus mastering versus making music. It's all their own skills.
So my students at the moment, year 10, they're currently using like programs to find samples of like drum beats and bass and keys, and
Nice.
instead of writing it all, they're just kind of putting it together like sample packs, right?
Yeah.
What advice would you have for students or people that are interested in either creating beats or actually doing what you're doing, and that's to create a whole package?
I'd say just make as much stuff as possible. It's probably not going to be amazing at the start, but just fall in love with making music and you'll get good at it. For me, I've written hundreds of songs and made hundreds of beats and mixed hundreds of tracks. And just you learn as you go little things and you develop your own style. And eventually you'll be making music that you'll be in love with. You'll probably be in love with the stuff that's not so great at the start too. I think that's the key. You got to love the good stuff and the bad stuff that you make, but just make as much as possible. And eventually you'll just grow and evolve.
Would you agree that at the moment, I think maybe it's been around for ages, that there's an art to listening, and that's something that we need to redevelop with people in general, because we've got so much visual stuff that happens with music at the moment that sometimes just sitting down and paying attention to the actual music that's happening in the song is a really good way to develop your ability to write music. Because I always like to reference, like if you're writing something, it's good to have influences because that's kind of what you're pointing in, but you're not trying to copy them. Do you know what I'm getting at? Like
Yeah, 100%.
learning the art of listening. Are there any particular albums, we've mentioned artists, but any particular albums that you really think have been like super influential other than the Eminem Recovery that have helped you shape your sound and who you are today? And I've got
Ooh,
one other thing I want to talk to you about as well, which is gonna be interesting.
that's a really tough question. These are great questions, man.
Welcome.
It's weird, but Ed Sheeran Plus was like my anthem growing up. Like I listened to that album so much, and I still find myself going back to it. So I think when I have more like ballady stuff, it comes from there. 2014 Forest Hills Drive is one of my favorite hip hop albums. Nothing Was the Same by Drake. Everything by Mac Miller. I really
Yeah.
love his discography because every album's so different, but I still love them for what it is. Um, Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd was one of those ones that really made me pay attention to listening. Like that was what
Yeah.
leveled me up at the art of listening because there's so much stuff going on in that, and there's so many nuances to pay attention to. I could endlessly list, bro. My Beautiful
Yeah.
Dark Twisted Fantasy was another one which I was like, I just love hearing stuff, and I'm like, I have no idea how they made this.
So here's something crazy that I always think about. Like, when you're in the studio, you'll have the situation. You're in the studio, you're writing something, and you're like, I'm going to add this little nuance here on this side, and it's really subtle. And you're like, that makes the difference. But then, how many people are going to listen to that song and
Yeah,
then not notice it? But then one day they'll be out for a walk or something, and they'll be like, "Holy crap! I just heard that like tambourine in the background. That's totally what's
yeah,
making that song like pop." Do you know what I mean?
yeah, man. 100%. Because even if they don't consciously hear it, I think they feel it.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Ed Sheeran, good that you mentioned that because like when he came out, he like this his story we could talk about forever. I think his
yeah,
story is fantastic. There was that one video, and it's still on YouTube to this day. I can't remember the name of the song. You don't need me, man. I need you. I think that's the
yeah. I
one.
knew you were gonna say, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And like someone showed this to me back when I was at university studying songwriting, and I was like mesmerized. There's this guy in a booth with rapping like nobody's business.
yeah,
And he's making it up on the fly, right? A
yeah.
lot
He's
of
got
it.
the loop pedal and stuff, right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's I think was my introduction to Ed Sheeran as well, and I was like, okay, this guy's the real deal.
Yeah. So here's a couple of questions I wanted to ask you. So as I was reviewing your album, I made mention that one of your songs kind of reminded me of Tekashi 6ix9ine for a bit.
Yeah, I know the one.
I think it was called Fight Club.
Yeah,
And
Fight Club.
and so what happened was, like, I was driving with my mate and I was like, bro, you got to listen to this song, right? Is this like a Tekashi 6ix9ine song? And he's like, yeah. And I said, but I'm gonna ask this guy, like, like, that's a character, right? Because I think Tekashi 6ix9ine, like, I feel
Yeah,
like he's a little bit too serious at times, but the style of rapping that exists is like it's almost like a Slipknot version of rap, if that's the
yeah.
best way that I could explain it. And because there's so much variety on that album, um, tell me about that particular song. Like, what drove you to want to write that one? Was it the beat, or what was it behind that one?
Um, that one was a cool one because my friend showed me this beat that he made, and he had the instrumentation, but the drums weren't quite hitting. So I was like, "Hey, bro, like I love that. Can you just send me the instruments?" And then I sent that to my producer, and I was like, "Hey, bro, I need the drums to hit like this." And so I kind of orchestrated it with the people around me. And then as soon as we had the beat, I knew where I wanted to go with it, and I really liked the movie Fight Club. I think I just
Yeah,
watched the movie Fight Club, so I put myself, I think the opening lyrics, I'm gonna start a fight club, pull up if you want,
yeah,
um, just kind of came to me because I'd just seen the movie and I was like, okay, I'm gonna write from the perspective of Tyler Durden.
nice.
And so if you watch the movie and then listen to the song, I reference like 10 different references to the movie.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I also just wanted that like crazy energy and like the anarchic vibe of the movie to translate into the song as well.
I think it does well. Like, the moment I heard that, I was like, "Whoa, this is intense, man."
Yeah.
Last question before we wrap up, man. And this is a really, I'm not going to say controversial one, but I think it's really important to ask and to discuss. So hip hop has a persona about it for the people that listen to it and things like that, right? And I think it's misrepresented a lot of the time. It's like metalheads. Like when I used to I went to Slayer once, I think, and I remember there was a circle pit and everyone was going crazy. But when somebody got
Yeah.
knocked down, they got kind of picked up. How
Yeah.
do you feel hip hop is represented by the media to the mass population? Do you think it's a
Ooh.
negative stereotype or a positive stereotype? Because if you think about where hip hop came from, as we discussed earlier on, it really came from that idea of getting youth out of, or getting people out of the hardships and using it as a
Yeah.
positive environment. It's a very, as I said, it's a pretty intense question, but I think that it's worth answering. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think there's different individuals using it as a vessel for different things. Some people get into hip hop and they look at it as just like a way to make some money. Um, it seems easy or it seems cool to be a rapper. And then there's some people who are in love with it. Some people who are using it to express hardship and get out of that place. And I think that's represented in the media in all different ways as well. I think its evolution has led it to so many different places, and that means that the stereotype is going to be stretched and pulled. I think it's a really case by case sort of question. You could point to a lot of the drill and how it just talks about gang related stuff, and then you can point to J. Cole and how he just talks about healing and speaking on social topics. So it's kind of cool that hip hop's covering pretty much everything that you can as in the human experience at the moment. Like I think people have opened up the doors to speak about vulnerabilities and stuff like that over the past 15 years. Um, and that's represented in the media in all shapes and forms. So I think it's overall a positive, but with everything there's going to be negative representation as well.
I think you've hit that on the head, like, so perfectly, because as someone who likes bands like Korn and like heavy metal, we also get a bad rep. But at the end of
Mm.
the day, what you've demonstrated to us via this interview tonight is that you're a human being who has feelings and makes music because he likes music.
Yeah,
Regardless of the type of music that it is, it's actually just you expressing yourself. And I think that's one of the benefits that hip hop has, is it's like, unlike metal, no offense to metal and rock, hip hop basically is capable of approaching and getting to everybody. As you said, hip hop has now
Yeah.
essentially become pop.
Yeah,
Well
man.
answered. Great answer.
Thanks, bro.
But all good. But before we go, I did say before we go like 3 times now, I recommend that you go watch somewhere about your RuneScape stuff, how you used RuneScape to fund your music, if that's right.
Yeah.
That's an awesome story. I watched that in advance, and I'm going to throw a couple of names out to you now to give
Okay.
to see what you think. Hobson.
I like Hobson. I actually got quite into Hobson when I was about 16. The Raw album was really dope, and I also like Ill Mind of Hobson 5. That's what really brought me to him.
Yep. And my mind has gone completely Logic.
Oh, man, you're naming like my childhood right now. Grew up on Logic when I was like 14, 15, playing Call of Duty. His Young Sinatra mixtapes were pretty much my life anthems. So one of my favorites.
And I've got that other one which I've just forgotten. He's one of my favorite rappers of all time. Oh, Joyner Lucas.
Joyner Lucas. Yeah, he's dope. I remember watching that one music video of the gang member who lured one of his classmates. That's my first introduction to him. And just seeing him evolve from that to just making real quality music and working with Eminem, I think they had a perfect matchup. He's a real good talent as well.
Sweet, man. Hey, look, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, and I hope everyone that's watching this, including my students, are going to go and check out your music. I reckon it's fantastic. As I said, I really enjoyed it. We listened to it in the car on the way back from school.
Yeah, thanks.
Sweet as. And anything new that we should be looking out for?
Well, I'm dropping a song every week, so if you stay
Yo.
tuned, there's just going to be a bunch of new, fresh music once a week, every Thursday.
Sweet. There you go, folks. Once a week, every Thursday. Nice to have you on board. I'm going to end the video recording here, and we'll just stay on for a moment until next time. Oh, and also before my students kill me, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, fam.
Yes.
All right, take care.
Thanks for having
Peace
me,
out.
bro.